would like to live more in the answered prayer? Yes?
Yes.
So we've been doing that all month, right? All month, talking about the prayer chest. Now, if you're here and you haven't been for the last 2 weeks, I'm going to give you an update, all right? Would that be okay? So we've been looking at this little metaphor, this little parable of the prayer chest. And in the story, the main character, Joseph, has a whole bunch of problems that happen. He's got 2 small children. He's been farming a farm that he didn't want to farm, and his wife died, and now the bank's taking over the farm, and everything's horrible. And just when he's about ready to lose it, he goes up in the attic, and there he finds this ancient prayer chest. And he finds in this, next to this prayer chest, a notebook that was written by his great-great-grandfather 100 years previous. And his grandfather's reading, he's reading this journal, and this journal goes on to tell him how most people's prayers are not answered. And why does God answer some prayers and not others? And then he lays down these 3 qualities that are so important. He calls them the 3 secrets to answered prayer. And so last week we talked about the first secret, which was we must, you may remember what it was?
Prayer is answered through.
Excellent. Those are the A students that sit right over there. That's right. That's right. Prayer is answered through us, correct? Yeah, so we looked at that idea, but today we're looking at the second secret, a very important aspect of living in the answered prayer. So would you like to know what that is?
Yes.
So tell me, Reb.
Tell me, Reb.
All right, I'm going to. So the second secret is that the prayer is answered through listening. So we're going to look at this idea of how we can become better listeners instead of just doers and controllers and making things happen. How is it that I can become a listener? I'd just like to share, first of all, from the book. When you are talking, you are a dam overflowing. But when you listen, you are an open vessel ready to receive. He's writing in the journal, he sees this. Reluctantly, I disclosed to you that I was such a man whose words spilled over like a drum. I banged my prayer into God's head in an effort to help God remember. The second secret means write your prayer down once and talk no more of it to God. From that point forward, listen. Only listen. And he asked his grandma Mary, who was laying down this principle. He says, how am I supposed to listen? A farmer like me, I've got chores to do from sunrise to sunset. I know some of you are thinking that. How am I supposed to find time to listen? I'm busy, man. Return to your work. Do what you must. But with the part ever inclined toward listening. Know that God speaks to us continuously. We cannot hear if we do not listen. He says that God must work so hard to get our attention. Wrenches my heart, dear son. Do not read the third secret until you've spent this night listening, and you will be surprised at how much one is able to hear in the silence. Right? So today, how many of you could do with a little more listening in your life, right? And I think that's all of us, right? That is all of us, which is learning to listen. Now, learning to listen to the divine is a little bit like learning to listen to a radio station. There's certain things that we must do in order to listen to a radio station. So imagine this radio station is called K Now, K-N-O-W, right? Okay, and in K Now, it's always broadcasting a higher truth. In the present moment, in K Now, there's always this divine consciousness it's there. God is already there. The divine idea is already there. Everything is already done. But it's us who must learn how to tune our radio in order to tune into that station. Right? So it's like, what is it that we can do that we can turn in? It reminds me of, as I talked about, levels of consciousness. So up in levels of consciousness, 4 or 5 up in the penthouse, right? Up at the penthouse, higher consciousness, we're tuned in to listening. We can hear. We're moving upstairs on that floor, on that vibrational floor where the answer is. And we can't actually hear the answer of the penthouse while we're locked in the basement. So we have to begin to align our awareness, first of all, so that we might tune in and dial in. So the first point is we look at what are the things that we can do and be in order to be a better listener. How many would like to be a better listener? That's right. The first thing, like a radio, we've got to turn on the power. There's this true story of this young man named Manuel, and he's from the Philippines. It was quite a while ago. And he came from a village that had no electricity or anything, very small village. And he had the opportunity to come to America. And he came to America, and you can only imagine, he had no electricity at home, right? And he came here and he saw the lights and everything, you know, the cities, and it was so exciting. And he wanted to take a piece of it home to his people in the village and his family. He wanted to share with them what it was like. So he went to the hardware store. He was so excited about a whole bunch of light bulbs. He bought some string or some cord, and he bought the little switches to turn the lights on. And he went home and he was so excited, and he took the wire and strung it all around his house and put the light bulbs in there and gathered everyone around. They're like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And he says, "You gotta wait until dark." And you can only imagine his surprise, because what poor Manuel didn't know is those light bulbs had to be hooked up to some electricity, and nothing happened. In order for us to be able to receive and to listen, we got to find ways to hook up to the source, right? To find ways to hook up to the source where the answers are. So our listening is really becomes more and more a part of our life the more that we align with that. And one of the ways I'd like to say is one of the ways we do that is relax more. We can't receive all of this and the answers when and be a listener when we're so tight. And life causes us to be uptight. How many have been uptight this week? Yeah, life gets very hectic. And it seems to be going faster and faster and more, and things are happening, they're changing. It's like frustrating. And relax. Take a breath. Meditate. But just the very act of relaxing lets go of these boundaries that get in the way of our lowly listening, of the part of us that can surrender and hear. So, you know, it's like this inspiration, the answered prayer, everything is already there. And we learn and become more habituated to be the one that can hear and that can listen, right? So the first thing we have to do is make a connection and turn on the power, right? The second thing is listen regularly. If we have a habit of listening, then we are going to be able to trust that when we need to know something, it's going to be there. It reminds me of another quick story. There was this gentleman that he lived in the country. We've got a lot of country bumpkins today, don't we? This man lived in the country, and then he moved to New York City, and he was walking down the street with his friend, and he said to his friend, "Oh, wow, listen to the crickets." His friend looked at him and said, "Are you kidding me? What crickets? I can't hear a cricket." He said, "No, be quiet and listen." And he finally heard it. But he could hear it because he was attuned to the crickets, right? He was aligned and attuned with the crickets because he was used to hearing the crickets. And so he was able to hear them. When we make listening a regular part of our life and we start to trust the the inspiration that we get, we are able to use it more, and it really is a habit, is something that we are able to open up to. You ever heard someone says, some people really have a really strong intuition, right? And some don't. It's like, wish I could hear something. Right. So, but we all have this inspiration. We all have this intuition, but it is a voice that sometimes we have to practice using. Some of us have already, it's easy, it's something that we work with. So, but one thing I want to ask you, would you rather live with inspiration or perspiration? Right? Would we rather live from inspiration or perspiration, of just knocking our head up against the wall, or working harder, and making more and more mistakes, working in struggle, versus taking that time for relaxation and taking that time to listen and develop that intuition, that we can be listening, that we can walk more easily down the pathways that will be supportive. I want to live by inspiration.
I want to live by inspiration.
I want to live by perspiration. It's a test. Oh, that's funny. You guys are funny. All right, so I think we're all in agreement, right? We want to live more by inspiration, right? And that's an exciting thing, I think, right? So let's go to point number 3, could we?
Yeah.
All right, what is it?
What is it?
All right, it is listen. Oh, this is good. Okay. Listen and take action. Listen and take action when appropriate. All right, now, let's talk about this a little bit. So listening and then taking action when appropriate. And the thing is that that's how we know that our listening is good information, right? Listening and taking action. It's like the man in a flood praying to God to be saved. Y'all know the story.
Yes.
I'm going to bore you with it again. Because it is the parable, the metaphor of what happens. God, please save me. So somebody comes by with a boat, right? Get in the boat. Oh no, I'm waiting for God. Pretty soon the flood rises and rises, and he gets up on top of the roof, and somebody else comes by with, I don't remember what it was, a boat, a bigger boat.
Helicopter.
Well, I was there. No, 3 times. And he keeps saying, no, I don't need him because I'm waiting for God. Until he dies. And he goes up there in front of God and says, God, why didn't you save me? And what does God say? I sent you 3 people to help you. But you didn't take it. And so a lot of times we do that because we have a little mind and we think, oh, it's got to come in a certain way. But when we're attuned to listening, the answered prayer, have you noticed, never comes in the way you think it will. Right? We talked about that in the seminar yesterday, in the workshop yesterday. It doesn't come in the way that we think it does. So we learn to be open and receptive. Watch what's happening. Move in the direction of the guidance. Move in the direction that's opening before us. Have you had great ideas? This is that somebody said recently, I loved it, was like, oh, was telling me about this great idea. It says, oh, that was a great idea. That was another one of those great ideas that I didn't do. Right? So we get all these wonderful ideas, and most times we don't act upon them. Okay? Not every idea is given to us to act on. Otherwise, we just go every here. Right. But I'd like for us to look, because I think that one of the biggest questions I've heard, I know I've dealt with it a lot too, and I hear this from people all the time. It's like, well, how do I know it's the voice of God and not me? Like there was a difference, right?
Yeah.
But there's actually some subtle things to look for as we're developing the ability to be better listeners. So would it be okay if we share a few of those ideas? All right, so the first thing is inspiration many times, most of the time, comes in flash. It comes just as a flash. It doesn't come as a result of your reasoning. It comes as a flash, it comes fully formed, and it hits you. And there's usually a feeling of peace or happiness with it. The peace and happiness lasts about as long as until you start overthinking it. So inspiration comes in a flash, but it feels peaceful, or it feels exciting, or it feels expansive. But it doesn't always stay that way. But let me share an example. One of the greatest lessons that I had about listening for guidance was this. It was at a gathering. It was a wedding, actually, and it was a tradition in a wedding party. There was about 200 people there to play the game rock, paper, and scissors. You remember that game? Rock, paper. Oh, everybody knows the game, right? Okay. Anyway, so the way it was played was one person was up front leading and played against the group, right? And then, every time half the people or a third of the people would sit down, and they kept doing it until there was one person standing, right? And so I noticed, I'm not good at this game, but for some reason, I tried something and it worked. And what it was I practiced completely not thinking about it and completely not making a decision until that moment. So it was like, whatever came to me in that moment, I did it. And I was the winner. Like, I was the last one standing. It was a miracle. But it was because I didn't think about it. Because I didn't think, and I trusted and let my body do it. And listen to the one thought right in that moment and right in that instant. And what I learned in that time, and trust me, I have forgotten it more than I learned it, okay? But I'm reminded over and over that the answer will show up when it's needed. The answer will show up when it's needed. And it shows up when it's needed and not before. Okay? And this is very important because we cause so much stress for ourselves. Trying to figure it all out, trying to figure out the answers for, trying to do this, trying to do this. And the answer's going to show up when it's needed. So right in that instant before I needed to do this or this or this, I knew what to do. And not a minute before. And I knew if I thought about it, it wouldn't work. Now, this is very important as we look right now about, our own prayer that we have in our heart. That prayer that's seeking to be known, and that prayer, that desire, that yearning that we have, we all do. To begin to trust that the answer will show up when it's needed. The words will come when it's needed. If we need to have a communication with somebody, have you ever tried to figure it all out in advance? It does not work because you don't know. But we learn to trust that the information and the words will come to us in the moment that is needed. So this idea of learning to be the listener is a learning experience. We are tapping in, we are tuning in to this spiritual side of ourselves. And in the spiritual side of ourselves, this higher consciousness, we are attuned to the higher intelligence. It already knows. It knows more than we know. It knows more than we know. And I have a sense that it's constantly trying to get our attention. It's constantly trying to show us and reveal to us what we need to know. And so, listening, it comes in a flash. There's some sort of feeling that feels good. Now, there are times when it doesn't feel good a little bit later. All right? That's okay. One more story, would that be all right? So when I got the inspiration to sell everything I have and leave and travel the world for a year, that was really nuts. Right? And so there was such a clear, so I'm walking down the beach and I completely hear unhook, follow me, unhook and come travel. And I was able to sit and listen and love that idea for a few days before I had to go home. And let that simmer. And I watched my mind try to destroy it before I got home. I watched my mind try to tear it apart, right? But I decided I would give myself a week where I didn't have to act on it later if I didn't want to, but I was going to pretend that it was an amazing divine idea and divine inspiration, and Spirit really wanted this for me, and I let myself daydream about how fabulous it would be to be able to travel and to be able to walk on the beaches of the world and just unhook for a while from all the other stuff. And I let that simmer inside, and I got more and more information and ideas. And of course, when I went home, I didn't trust it anymore, right? Because then the mind starts getting involved. But if we've allowed ourselves to have a moment of clear listening and remember how it felt inside, then we can at least give it a little more space to see if this is one of the things that wants to take root. Not everything, not every kind of wild idea really needs to take root, right? But as we develop that listening area, as we develop that relationship with the divine, as we develop that, we learn a new voice. We learn, like the country bumpkin that could hear the crickets in New York City. We learn to be the one that can hear the divine words of inspiration in the middle of our busy, hectic life. We learn by learning to hear what that feels, to hear what it feels to me. I don't know how you receive it, it's like a feeling or a hearing. Everybody's different, but we learn the voice that listening calls us to. So in order to experience the answered prayer, this second secret, can we see how it might be important? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that we make the prayer, we place it in the prayer chest. In other words, we let it go. You'll notice on the back of your cards that it's set up for you to make your own prayer chest and to write that on and have that experience, a wonderful experience of writing it down, putting it in there, and don't picking it up again. Just let it go. There's a few leftover prayer chests out front from the workshop that a few of you could get. So, are you ready to do it? Mm-hmm. All right, so let's review, should we? Mm-hmm. All right. Yes. I have to get my glasses on. All right, so we're going to know, we're going to be able to tune into K-Now Radio, right? K-Now Radio, it's always in the present moment, and the present moment is where we receive the inspiration. We're tuning into that by making a connection, by turning on the power, by listening regularly and being inspired. I'm ready to live by inspiration, not perspiration. I'm ready to live by inspiration, not perspiration. And I'm ready to listen and take action.
I'm ready to listen and take action.
Let's pray. And so here we are in this moment. With an ear towards listening. With an ear towards that's just open and receptive and ready. Knowing that whatever we need will be there for us when we need it. That as we're walking across the deep ravine below us, we know that the bridge is building for us as we walk. In other words, that we know that we are receiving the guidance as it is needed, and we learn to trust that. That we are connected to this holy source, and it is speaking in us and through us in every moment, and we trust in that. And so I live and move and have my divine connection, and I'm so grateful moving through life with a listening ear, because I really, really get it and know that there's only one life, and that life is good. And it is constantly and forever directing us to that greater good. And for that, I'm so grateful. Thank you, God. And so it is.